Well, hello, Don't Die Rusty Nation. This is Rick Hansen and with Ricky Bruley. And when we get into the podcast here, you'll hear me say my co-host, but you will not hear me say his name because I was trying to think of something funny to say. And as usual, my mouth got mixed up.
Hey, it's fine. You gave me some pretty good props. Something about me being all smiles, which isn't true, but I kind of got that. What
Yeah.
do they call? What do they call that for men? A resting dick face.
Yeah.
If I'm not making a strong effort to smile, it doesn't look like I'm smiling.
There, okay. Well, but I did say, you're more than a co-host. You're a technological engineer. You're,
That's right. You did.
yeah, the art, the maker of smiles, I said.
Yeah. 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 I didn't know how to take that. I was like, okay, all right, I'll take it.
There
I
you
like
go.
it. It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But our guest was Sam Soholt.
Yeah.
He's a professional photographer, videographer. He has public land tees. He's actually, when we talked to him, we were lucky, weren't we?
Yeah.
Because it was a day after his birthday. And then we talked to him on a Monday, and his baby, Oakley Ann, was born on Wednesday. So
Wednesday. Yeah.
that was awesome.
Yeah, that was really cool. He sent us some pictures and yeah, I mean, just absolutely amazing. I'll remember that day the rest of my life. I wanted to start chiming in and be like, were you in the room when it happened and all that? Because it is, yeah, it's something you'll definitely never forget. I'll tell you that. But yeah, no, just really, really cool. I'm excited for him.
Yeah, and it's we talked about a lot of cool things, and Sam had a Achilles tendon tear, which is keeping him home and a little bit more this year because he's always out doing his job of videoing and taking pictures and doing all kinds of fun adventure stuff. And he said he's still going to do it, and you'll have to listen to the podcast. But you know what? Having a new baby and being able to enjoy that. I mean, we've talked before. I'll never get to experience that. But then guess what? I've never changed a diaper, and I never will.
Well, that is most certainly a thing to be thankful for. I'll be honest with you there.
I'm the fun uncle that just hands the baby back,
Right?
So.
I used to be that guy, still am, but yeah, it was a really cool conversation. It's wild because when I went back and listened to the episode as I was after you got it edited, and I asked the question like, how do you feel about things kind of slowing down for you this season? And then when you listen to it, because I was listening to him talk, but then at the same time, you're also kind of trying to think like, okay, how can I respond to what he's saying? And so you're kind of trying to think ahead a little bit. And it's just funny because he is like, yeah, I'm probably still going to do some duck hunting and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do this. And I'm like, holy man, for a guy who's supposed to be taking it easy, sounds like you're going to be getting out and getting at it. He'll probably hunt more than I do, to be honest.
Definitely will, so guarantee it.
Cool.
So yeah, and there's some cool things that's happening with him, and I hope people enjoy the conversation we had. I know I did. And Sam is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet and one of the best people too in the world, So anyway, I hope people enjoy this conversation. Here we go. Welcome to the Don't Die Rusty podcast. I'm Rick Hansen, and we will be talking about living, not dying. We're all in this adventure together, and we will be interviewing people who inspire us to live our best lives. People with various backgrounds who will walk us down the trails they took to not die rusty. Adventure in life are many things to many people. It could be a sprint or an endurance race, but with each adventure, we become a better version of us. We hope you keep chasing those dreams, being the best you, and of course, don't die rusty. Hello, Don't Die Rusty Nation. We are here with another exciting episode with my co-host, and let me see, he's more than that. He's like the technological engineer. He's the maker of smiles, whatever we want to say. And then we have Sam Soholt. He is a friend. He's a photographer. He's a funny man. He makes cool videos. You do all kinds of stuff. And why don't you introduce yourself then a little bit, Sam, since I can't do you justice.
Let's see here. I have been a professional photographer, videographer for over a decade now, 13 years. I have been the last 7 of those years I've dedicated mostly to conservation pursuits and raising money for conservation initiatives, and talking a lot about public land issues and stuff like that. And above and beyond that, I'm just somebody who loves being outside as much as possible. So spend a lot of time in the woods and chasing critters around and doing that with good people.
I have to admit, because you did go with me once.
I did.
It was a good
Yeah.
time.
And it was a good time with good people and
Yeah.
and a couple
Ashley
couple
was
deer
fun too.
a couple deer to show for it. So
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah.
I have another question for you. If you follow Sam Soholt, you'll know this, but I saw on his story yesterday they were trying to show Sam injured his Achilles tendon,
Yeah.
and
Oh
they
yeah.
were showing us how to do surgery with a celery,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that was quite interesting. And I thought, huh, that's I didn't know that's how they did that. So did you see this before they did the surgery, or did you just like the celery how they did it?
Yeah. So I have, it pays to have lots of friends all over the country, or lots of people I know.
Mm-hmm.
And after I ruptured my Achilles, I'd posted about it and had multiple people, including Jesse Kurtenbach, reached out, and he got me in touch with a good surgeon in the Black Hills area. And I was talking to him. I actually went to high school with the guy, and I was talking to him about it, and he was like, the method of repair that you want to do is called the PARS 2 method, or the speed bridge. There's a couple different names for it, but basically what they used to do for Achilles is they would basically flay you open like a fish. You'd have like a 10 to 12 inch scar like all the way up inside, and because they'd have to like open you
Yeah.
all the way up and then sew that back together, and then but like risk of infection was super high. And now with that PARS 2 method, they have this tool where you end up with a 1 inch, little over an inch cut on the back of your calf, or like on the where your Achilles is, and then they just run that tool up under there to like hold on the sides of your tendon. They run threading through, and then the worst part, honestly, like the most painful part, like after waking up, is they put these two anchors into your heel, like, and they like
Mm-hmm.
pound those in, and that is still like, because that's where they tie off the thread, so it holds that Achilles together. That is still like the most painful part. But yeah, I watched all sorts of videos. Like Jesse sent me one of like a more, not celery, but a more like technical version of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then but the celery one's cool because it kind of shows you like what that tool is doing and how they run those threads and sew you up, and it's pretty neat.
And basically, like the celery is simulating the Achilles tendon.
Yes.
Correct.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
they,
just for the
yeah.
viewers, but
Oh yeah.
when I saw it, it kind of turned my stomach a little bit, just like imagining the real. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was yeah, I didn't know how I was going to feel. Like, I watched a lot of stuff ahead of it, and like, you start like all of a sudden you're a semi-expert on like Achilles rehabilitation. I probably watched like 50 hours of YouTube videos on like other people, like, rehab and PT and different stuff and exercises and all that. And so like you go into it like at least knowing like what you're up against. And I have a cousin who's a sports PT, has been doing it for 25 years, and I called him right away, and he was like, "Man, it doesn't matter if you get surgery or if you don't get surgery, the recovery is an absolute bear. Like, it's just like 12 months before you're back to normal, and maybe like hopefully you're back to normal, but like you just never know if it's ever going to be actually the same, but you just got to do everything you possibly can to like rehabilitate it as it goes and don't give up on your PT. So I have not been. I have been a very good patient so far.
Well, well, your
Imagine.
story shows it too. I mean, I keep on seeing how you're healing, and I'm keeping tabs on you, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And with that, you talked about conservation in public. You probably aren't going to do your duck walk, are you?
I personally will not be walking 100 miles this year.
You're going to
We're
talk Josh, your brother, doing it.
no, we are pivoting quite a bit, and
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna be cool. I think we're gonna do it more of like a community style, and have people all over the country, throw some decoys on their back and go for a walk for 10 miles or whatever, and kind of push people towards that donation page and talk about the ducks and kind of explain what the duck stamp does for conservation. And I think it'll be cool because we'll get to like have videos from people like you. If I can talk you into going for a 10-mile walk and throw some decoys on your back, and
Do I
then
have to go? Do I have to be by a pond, or can I climb a
no,
mountain?
no, I think you can do whatever you want.
Oh,
I don't care.
you're
Yeah,
asking for it, man.
no, it's great. The more creative, the better, because
Oh,
the real goal of the whole thing is going to be to have all of these videos and photos from people all over the country sending in their experience out, kind of waving that duck flag, and then we can cross post on public land tees and our pages and kind of really hype it up around how important all of that stuff is. So we're gonna have some fun with it.
Yeah.
well,
That's
we will too then.
mhm.
Yes,
All
absolutely.
right. You let me be creative. We'll get some creation out there.
Full creative liberties. Do whatever you want.
And I like hearing that. That's good. Here's another thing that our listeners, well, a lot of the listeners probably will be knowing, but Sam is going to be dad here really soon, like within days, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
Days.
Um, and I mean, I was kind of chatting with you before, but are we the last podcast before you're a dad?
I mean, unless a podcast pops up on Thursday, before the due date on Friday, or if Ash goes long and like if something happens, but as of right now, the last one I have scheduled before the due date is you guys. So I'm pumped to be. This is the final send off before I become a father.
Well, that is amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, I've never been a dad. I've been around my uh, sisters. I've been around other people, friends that have kids and stuff, but I've never got to experience such things. But I used to work at a place called Triggers, and it's kind of where I met Ricky actually. Through things. And when Justin had his first kid, it was like I, I'm in charge of another life. You know what I mean? And it was like, whoa. So how do you feel? How's dad? Are you? What are you looking forward to?
Okay, honestly, I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of man being a dad turns me into. Because I think it's different for everyone, right? I think,
Yep.
obviously there's going to be unconditional, immediate love for that kid.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Um, and all of those things, but I'm excited. I'm 37 as of yesterday. And so a little late to the game when it comes to kids, like, at least if you're from the Midwest, pretty normal if you live near the coast to wait a little
Hmm.
bit longer. Um, but I'm, in the eyes of everybody in the Midwest, I'm a huge failure for not having a child until my late 30s. But no, I'm pumped. I've been, living a life of travel and adventure and all these
Hmm.
things on my own and then with my wife, but never, being in charge or, and taking care of, another life that I'm responsible for. And so I'm really excited to kind of transition to being a new man altogether.
Yeah, I
That's
mean, you're already a pretty good guy, so I mean, I don't. How much better can you get? Honestly, I mean,
Well, I think I appreciate the compliment. And I'm going to do the best I possibly can at being a
yeah,
dad. I'm super excited.
yeah. it is pretty amazing. It'll change some things, but it's like, Rick and I were talking briefly yesterday about some things, and part of the reason I'm kind of excited about having this conversation is just kind of curious about, like, again, kind of what's going through your mind as far as, because you're getting hit with a lot right now. Like, you're also a very busy guy. You've got a lot of irons in the fire, and then not only do you have that typically going for you, but then with your injury now, that kind of changes some things. And then now you're going to be a dad, and it's just, so it's a lot of things. Now you're going into probably one of your first hunting seasons where you're going to be affected on like two different fronts, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's some where you might be busier than another. Maybe you've got some clientele that you got to do some photography or videography for, and that takes you away from your own personal time. But so how are you feeling about that as far as how things are going to affect it, like your upcoming season?
When we found out that Ash was pregnant, I immediately, streamlined this coming fall. Like decided, obviously no trips in September, wanted to be home for that
Mm-hmm.
whole month and just be able to be around and be a dad, step out in the garage and do my calls and whatever I might need to do, just to keep things kind of moving forward, but
Mm-hmm.
not being on the road anywhere. And so I didn't have anything planned until early October. I had one really big film project that I was going to do, and that obviously, as soon as like I I hit the floor after I tore my Achilles and immediately had started to replan my entire year.
Yeah.
It was just like, okay, I had already, cut way back on trips. I was going to do things a lot more efficiently, just, get the content that I need for my clients and partners while I'm out on, some shorter trips throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
And after getting injured, it was like, okay, let's pivot again. How do we make this work where I still keep all of my clients and partners happy, get them what they need, do what I need to do for myself for public land tees and content for that type of stuff, but then still like have the time to just be home and be a dad, work on that side of things. And so I've been kind of like positioning myself to like get ready for that. And like, I don't think I'll ever truly be ready because this is definitely going to be the first season where I'm like, like I'm probably not going to want to go. Like, I just want to, I
Mm-hmm.
just want to be
Yeah.
home and stay
Yeah.
and be present, and do those things. Um, so yeah, I'm just going into this fall. I've completely changed tactics. Typically I'm, trying to do a couple Western trips, whether that's mule deer or elk or whatever. I had two Western trips on the docket. Both were going to be in North Dakota, but I won't be doing either of those this year, which is fine. It'll allow me to switch things up, and I'm going to do a lot more waterfowl hunting. I can sneak out for a morning and hop in a field with some buddies and shoot mallards or geese or whatever, and then be back by midday and be on dad duty for the rest of the day and let mom take a break. And I'll do some fall fishing. I'm getting a getting a boat this fall to use and go fish and do some blast and cast type stuff. So be able to just I've just switched things up in a way where I'm going to get to do a lot more things locally. And I'm super excited about it because it's been a lot of years where it's like, all right, next week I'm gone for, like 5 days on this trip, and then I'm home for a
Yeah.
few, and then I'm gone again. Or, even if I am close to home, I'm just like kind of grinding it out on the whitetail side of things and just like hang and hunt, hang and hunt, hang and hunt, like
Mm-hmm.
barely,
Yeah.
barely sleeping, barely eating, just like, doing it until the job gets done. Um, and this year I get to transition and have a little bit more fun with it all. I'll probably road hunt for roosters, kill some ducks, catch some fish, chase some deer in
Mm-hmm.
November as my healing allows. Um, I'll do a lot more educational style stuff from the garage.
Mm-hmm.
Helping people understand how to plan hunts through Onyx maps, or like what do I bring in my whitetail pack, every day, layering systems, all that kind of stuff. It'll just
Mm-hmm.
be fun to like do knowledge dumps. I can go out at 4 a.m. if I have an idea and film something quick for
Right.
15 minutes in the garage,
Yeah.
and then edit that up, and then the rest of the day I can just be hanging out with my kiddo, or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to look different this fall, but it's going to be fun to kind of change things up.
Yeah, for sure. Isn't it great how the good Lord has to make people like us slow down and stop for a little bit?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, my wife and I keep talking about it. I was like, honestly, you never want to get injured, right? But
Yeah.
partially, like I always try to look for silver lining, blessing in
Hmm.
disguise. Like just like, okay, what did this slowdown prevent from happening? Or what is this slowdown going to allow to happen? Because I had to
Yeah.
shift things around. So constantly looking for the opportunity rather than just like trying to be down in the dumps.
Right.
And so far, the mental state of getting this thing healed up has been pretty good. A lot of people talk to me about how like you can go to a pretty dark place because of injury.
Hmm.
And after just like talking to a bunch of people who have healed up from this and gone through it, just like everybody told me like just it's slow, don't rush it, don't risk re-injury, because that's when it gets real dark, is if you re-rupture something down the road.
Yeah.
And so from day one, it's been like, all right, just focus on, a quarter to a half% improvement, stack those day after day after day after day. And don't try to make leaps and bounds. It's going to take what it takes and just get there.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see you coming along well. It's good to see you're coming along well, man.
Thanks.
But it's interesting because I mean I cut my tendon being a dumbass one day. I was changing my rangefinder battery with a knife and cut my thumb. And
Mm-hmm.
but when the doctor had it open, I mean, because I said we need to get this stitched up, and I need to get going because I'm hunting in Montana tomorrow. And he said, "No, you're not. We need to." Do you see that little white thing there? Because it was like 97%, so it wasn't completely cut, but
Yeah.
and we went in and he made me move my thumb and he said, "You don't want to do this a second time, so take care of it." But I did
Right.
shoot my biggest buck the next day. Anyway, but and I did everything one handed because I was all
Uh-huh.
wrapped up, But that's the way it goes. But it's interesting to hear like what you're going through there because you know what I've had the privilege because you've made this happen to walk down a mountain with your dad.
Mm-hmm.
At Tac Terry Peak, we walked down the mountain, and I know you have a good teacher right there because
Yeah,
he's a
for
good
sure.
man.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
I have to say that I have to give Jerry a little thumbs up there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, give him some props. He's
Yeah,
he he's the one that raised me. So if I can,
yeah,
if I can do half as good a job, we'll be all right.
yeah. So, but no, I had to say that there because, like I said, it's interesting the times and good, and I can't remember Ricky. I think it was maybe it was a couple episodes back, but we talked about why some things just happen for a reason, and your Achilles happened for a reason, and
Yeah.
also here's another thing that I think of like sometimes if you don't get to go west, we'll just say this year to go on a hunt, next year the fire is burning just a little bit more because
Mm-hmm.
we grow older and the fire starts burning like what I missed last year. So this is good. I'm saying maybe we take it in more because we
Yeah.
know what we missed the year before or whenever, and that's with life. That's with anything that you
Hmm.
miss something once, let's see what happens again.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I've been, already setting goals, right? It's like, okay, like my first goal is to be able to do a single leg calf raise by my 3-month appointment, which is in 23 days.
Hmm.
So I'm, I'm slowly working up. I've got a total gym that I can do. I can keep changing the elevation. And so I keep adding resistance on my calf raises, and that's been really good. And then, but if I can hit that goal, I'm ahead of schedule. And so if I don't do it on that day, it's not the end of the world. It means I'm normal.
Yep.
But that's that's the first goal. And then the next goal is like, okay, like I want to be able to like, walk in slowly and climb up a ladder stand by November. Like, okay, like, go get in a tree for a couple days. Like I won't, no hanging
Yeah.
hunts this fall. Absolutely not. Never going to happen. Which is crazy because typically I'll do like 75 of those every fall, or
Yeah.
Yep.
more. Um, so I've just been setting these little like, these little hills to start climbing and get out there. And so like by next turkey season, like I want to be like fully ready to go hike again.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think, like you said, it all happens for a reason. And, like the day after it happened, my good buddy Jason Matzinger was like, it's like, who knows, man? Like you had this big Western trip planned, kind of like solo type deal. He's like, maybe this kept you from having something happen while you're out there in the middle of nowhere when it's 100 degrees and, you get bit by a snake or, whatever it
Yep.
might be. Like, who knows what happens? Maybe this kept you from like that little incident that was going to happen this fall and you can go get after it next year.
Yeah.
I was like, yep, that's exactly it. Sucks in the moment, but in the grand scheme of things, this is such a short period of time and it's all going to go so fast trying to raise a little kid and soak all that in and do all this stuff. It's all going to be great.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Jason and I talked out at TAC at Big Sky a little bit about, he's getting more, he's looking at the bigger picture of a lot of things too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, that is really, really interesting to me because I think we get older and we start realizing, and you go hard when you're young and you start realizing picking and choosing the biggest and best adventures you can go on instead of having FOMO of I'm not there,
Right.
or what am I missing? Is that big buck walking by or bull or whatever? But I'll
Right.
give you a little FOMO. I'll send you texts and pictures from
Yeah, please
where
do.
you and I went elk hunting went deer hunting, and because I'm
Yep.
going elk hunting there this year and deer hunting.
Nice.
So yeah.
Nice.
So anyway,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
Ricky, you need to hear this though, because when Sam and I and Ashley went hunting, we were talking a little bit about this elk, and we come over the hill, and there was probably 30 elk there, wasn't there?
Yeah, probably. Yep. Yep.
And we had
Yep.
it was the most relaxing, fun hunt. I mean, I didn't have a tag, so I was just along for the ride, but it was a fun, just those are the things that I think people lose sight of sometimes because we're so focused on something, and it was just a relaxing, fun, let's joke around, enjoy
Yep.
life. I mean,
Yeah.
it was, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the whole experience. So
It was
but
it was a blast. It was
you know
like you
what?
said, no pressure on anything. And I just watched the clip I don't know, a couple days ago and I can on camera I'm like saw it. It's like, 3x3 frame. It's 12 degrees. Shoot that thing. And that was the one. That was the one that
That's the funniest part of the whole deal. When,
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we're both standing there like, shoot it.
Yeah. What are you doing? Yeah.
So it was just fun hunting with Ashley and you, and then just the fun parts of life there.
Yeah.
So
Rick, you were talking about, how next year, the fire will burn a little hotter. My last Western trip was in 2019, and I'm going out to North Dakota this year. So I got 5 years of fires
Fire.
that I got to put out. I'm
there
ready.
you go.
5
I'm
years of
ready to get
kindling
it.
built up.
Right?
You'll be like a powder keg there, ready to
Yeah.
explode out there. Yeah.
It might just spontaneously combust
Yeah,
right when I
you're gonna
step
be
out
like
of
the
truck.
tops of pine trees in a forest fire, just blow.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
you in for like I said, you have public land tees. I'd like to get into the public land tees before the photography because we might
Yeah,
we'll go a long ways there. But and that's one of your companies that is promoting for all of us, everybody, to have the right and the privilege to be on these public lands.
yeah, yeah.
And
So, yeah, my older brother Josh, and I started it in 2017, and it was honestly like we need it more than ever now. There's a bunch of legislation that's in Utah, stuff happened, all sorts of crazy stuff going on right now. But we started it back in 2017, kind of on the tail end of what was looking to be like a transfer of the nation's public lands from federally managed to state managed. And, long story short, states can't afford to manage all of that public land. And it's a fast track to getting it sold off and privatized. And so we started Public Land Tees as a way to give money back to organizations that are boots on the ground every day. So whether that be Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation or the Mule Deer Foundation or NWTF or at this point I think we've worked with like 9 different conservation groups to fund different, whether it be access initiatives or habitat projects or you name it, land acquisition, so it opens up more public, that type of thing. It's just been a way for us to kind of wave that flag and give back a little bit of money from every sale that we have on the website, which has been super fun.
That's, because I look at that stuff and very few people understand what public land truly is and how I mean it's very very valuable, but it's sensitive too. I mean, we start selling off these tracts of land, we have nowhere else to go. I'm glad you're out there helping all these companies and I mean companies, these organizations and stuff like that, and helping us keep these lands in our hands. I should say, there's a T-shirt right there. Keep these lands in our hands.
I think the big thing for people to understand is, we're not making any more land, and we're adding a whole lot of people to the country every day. And as that happens, it's not so much that we're losing a bunch of public ground. It's that those grounds are getting more crowded because we're losing access to private ground. So I think that's simply a symptom of having so many people in the country. Is you think not that I don't know how many years ago now. There's whatever 350 million people in the country. We're looking at a generation ago. There was probably 100 million people. So when you start to look at like, okay, we're just kind of like there's a lot of us that are taking up space and asking permission and or leasing up land or whatever it might be. So there's starting to be a little bit more of a limited resource, and so if we can't protect and maintain like the public access that we have, if we lose that, you'll see just a massive drop off in participation, and then we lose like our giant voice that we have to protect habitat and wildlife and different species. Like we lose all that. So it's our small way of giving back and trying to protect that for future generations, because the last thing I would want to see is for my kid to grow up without access to those types of things, or their kids to grow up without access to those types of things and be just pigeonholed into national parks and that's it, rather than being able to go out and spend time on that 640 million acres that's available to all.
We went out to Yellowstone and did some other stuff over the 4th of July, and we hadn't been there for about 5-6 years maybe. And I would start thinking about this stuff, and our national parks are great. I'm not going to say they aren't, but here's the deal. When you have walkways, when you have asphalt, and you have everything through there, and then people don't realize that there's other public land that is somewhat more beautiful than these areas that you can really go enjoy and hike and do what you know, don't have to have a permit and go camp up or wherever, and that's the public land that I really, really enjoy. I mean, going back to that hunt that we went on that morning with those with all the snow just covered those trees, it was the most
Mm-hmm.
beautiful thing you could see. And very few people get to see those kind of things, and we need to keep that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so thank you.
I mean, we are a very small part, but we're just, we keep trying to make that bigger. So,
Well, that's good. So now, well, you being a professional photographer and videographer, I want to talk about some stuff right now. You've switched your Sony to now you're shooting Nikon. How does that feel?
I'm a Canon guy.
Oh,
Yeah, not
Canon guy.
Nikon. I went to, yeah, Canon guy.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm home again.
Yeah. Really?
I I shot Canon forever, from 2010 until I guess 2018 is when I got into Sony.
Hmm.
And honestly, I had kept looking for an excuse to go back to Canon, but to be totally honest, they just hadn't kept up. And so like for being able to do photo and video, Sony was really the one. Until like the last couple renditions of what Canon has put out, they kind of caught up and have done some really, cool things with their cameras. And now I've been able to work directly with Canon and Bedford cameras, and going to do a kind of an educational series on
Yeah.
helping people shoot better photos. And so, A, I've been looking for an excuse to go back to Canon, so this was a really good excuse. And two, it's like it's going to be fun to help others, shoot better photos in the field. And I'm going to do a lot of like very basic stuff, because I think a lot of people out there, they're not necessarily looking to, be a photographer in the industry. There'll be a small percentage that that's their ultimate goal, but most
Mhm.
people just want to capture better photos for themselves, like to be able to go home from a hunt or from an adventure or from whatever, and have this whole, giant memory card full of good shots that they can do whatever they want with, whether that be posted to social or turn it into a coffee table book to remember, like just the experience, or tell a story, or be able to share that with friends and family when they get home, whatever it might be. I think there's just a lot of people that are just looking to be able to go home with, rather than a bunch of blurry photos or just, a couple shots, that they took on their $5,000 camera because they were too nervous to, turn it on and switch it to manual.
Mhm.
Um, I think it'll be fun to like break it down to like, even as much as like, what is ISO and what does that actually mean for you?
Yeah.
What are the three types of light that you need to control when it comes to a camp? Like just
Yeah.
very simple, basic concepts to help people do better.
Because that's really what I want to do. I mean, I mean, I would like to maybe sell some pictures someday, but I want to get better. And luckily, I've had you to run questions by. But
Mm-hmm.
most of my photos that want to take are I don't, and it's nothing against any other photographer because there's a lot of photos I see, but the photos I take mean more to me. You understand? You know what I
Of
mean?
course.
So my adventure, if I've captured an elk or a deer or a bear or whatever else, a bighorn sheep, like I was pointing out there, um, that's the art I want in my house for my memories for myself, and to be able to
Right.
take a great picture and have that in your house and always walk by it and look at it, and those memories come back, and I remember that adventure.
Yeah.
So
You know,
that's
uh, yeah. And one other benefit of that, and this is a full tangent, but one other benefit of taking really good photos, especially when it comes to like, if you have a successful hunt, whether that be a deer or an elk or a turkey or whatever, um, you can save yourself a lot of money on taxidermy if you have really good photos after the fact. Because if you have these really cool photos, you could do your amount. You
yeah.
don't
Mhm.
necessarily need to have $1,000 mount when you
Mhm.
can have that photo on the wall, and like every time you see that photo that you took or had somebody take or set up on a tripod or whatever, you can have that whole experience of the memory, and you don't have to have something on the wall. I'm not saying you shouldn't get do taxidermy. I'm just saying it's an option for any of you listening that may have spouses or significant others that don't like having a lot of taxidermy all over the walls in your home.
Yeah, yeah, and it's amazing too. Like when it comes to taking those shots, there's just some really simple things that people can do, even with maybe not a super expensive camera. But there's
Mm-hmm.
just educate yourself on how to take better photos of that, because you see so many that are just like, and I don't want to like come down on people or anything like that, but there's just a lot of, like uh, me personally, like the back of the truck, tongue sticking out, blood everywhere, drives me absolutely insane.
Yep.
Those types of photos, but it doesn't take a lot to, just do a couple things differently. Have some specific settings, make sure the lighting is take a minute to make sure that the animal is framed and set up in a way where the lighting is good, and then that obviously is a really good way to capture that memory too.
Right. Right. And I get asked a lot. You said like even on your phone, right? Or I have a lot of people ask me like, what's the best camera to get? And there's a couple answers. One, the best camera to get is the one you already have. So whether that be your cell phone, which the cameras on are now ridiculous, especially some, the new iPhone stuff where you can shoot in RAW and then you can edit in Lightroom Mobile, for free.
Mhm.
Like you can take amazing photos as long as you understand how to frame up a photo. And then the other thing is like it depends on your budget. But I will tell you that spending more money on a camera will not make you shoot more photos. So so you're better off spending within your budget or using your phone and shooting as many photos as possible to learn the art, and you will know when you have outgrown that tool. Like
Mhm.
whether that be an entry level, Canon Rebel, or a used one for a couple $100 or whatever, shoot a whole pile of photos and you'll continue to get better, and then at some point you will know, like, okay, I need something that has better low light capability, or I need something that has more megapixels so I can mess with it more post on editing software.
Mhm.
You will know, you'll get to a point where you're like, this just I've surpassed, like my skill set of being able to shoot a photo has surpassed what this camera can do, and then you'll go on to the next one. But until
Yeah.
that point, you haven't shot enough photos. If you're not at that point, if you're like, I just want to spend, $4,000 on a camera body, you'll get it. It'll sit on the shelf, and then you'll end
Yeah.
up selling it 3 to 5 years down the road for a lot less money than you paid for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, the best camera that you can get is the one you already own.
Because I mean, I feel lucky because when you set up to take Ashley's picture with her deer, it's like, holy moly, he's back there. And then I see the picture and I go, holy smokes, that's awesome. And,
Yeah.
and to see that stuff, because I would like to know, I mean, what, because to me, the picture is there that you see. And I think everybody has their own way of seeing a picture.
Hmm.
But I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I'm going to go into like one of your most famous pictures, I would say, is Joe Rogan with the moose leg
Yep.
on the. And how does it feel to be on the cover of magazines? How does it feel to have your picture on the cover of a magazine? Because, you know, I I look at that picture. It comes on here and there, and then when it came out too, it's like that's a badass picture, man.
Yeah, like, I mean, honestly, like when I was coming up in my career, shooting photos and following people around, um like I remember, like there was one day that at the time I was living in Bozeman and I was riding with some buddies, and I was working I think I was a sales rep at the time, but we were all messing around shooting photos. I had filmed, for Midwest Whitetail, but at the time I was not like in a career of filming and photography. But we would go out and shoot photos of old grain bins and stuff in Montana, and go try to find deer and elk and whatever. But I remember rolling back into Bozeman one day and thinking like, okay, next goal is a cover photo. And it took a while to get there.
Hmm.
But the feeling of having your photo on the cover of a magazine is very special. It's like the ultimate compliment, right? Like it was good enough for like anybody who's going to see or buy that magazine, like gets to see something that you shot. So I don't, like over the years, I don't know how many millions of eyes have been, have seen my work on, I should probably know off the top of my head how many covers I have now. It's 6 or 7. But like every time it's happened, it's just like the best feeling that a photographer can have.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, it's like part of the reason, I'm always trying to like have more goals, right? And so like had
Hmm.
multiple covers on different magazines and whatever, and that's partially what led to like, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next big goal? What's the next big swing we're going to take? Um, so yeah, it's to keep it short. It's awesome. It's just it's just awesome. Yeah.
Well, kids kind of seem like it'd be like uh, a singer and they get a number one hit, and you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean. And it's like you see them, you see movies and you see this, and everybody talks. Well, that's my song on the radio, or
Right.
whatever. And
Yeah.
and that's your world. People are seeing your world because you just took this picture, and it had to be like the volume just got turned up too.
Oh yeah, turn that. It's all the way to 11 for sure. It's just yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but
And the crazy thing is like, so the Rogan cover with the moose leg is certainly the most famous photo I've ever taken, and probably will ever take. Um, and it gave my career a gigantic stepping stone. It put me in front of a whole slew of editors and writers who saw that photo and saw the photo credit go to me. So it definitely opened a lot of doors when it came to like working with different brands and that kind of thing. But the one that I am most proud of is I growing up, in South Dakota, like grew up avid waterfowl hunter. Just that's all I did from age 10 to 24, and would deer hunt a little bit here and there, and didn't really get into the big game thing until my final year of college. But being so immersed in the duck side of things, like I shot a macro photo of a curly tail from a mallard, and I used to collect all the curly tails from every single mallard I shot, every drake mallard I shot. I have an old like pottery box thing that's just chock full of curly tails. It's still in my garage. What am I going to do with that? I have no idea. Like I have no use for all these feathers. But it was always something special to keep. It was just like that little trophy from when you had like a really good shoot.
mhm.
And so I took a macro photo of a single curly tail. And 2 years later, I was in bear camp, and the one of the hunters in bear camp happened to be the editor of Wildfowl magazine, which is like was like the duck hunting Bible when we were growing up. And so every time that would roll in, you read all the articles and the big gear issue every year and the whole thing. And so being able to have that photo on the cover of Wildfowl, like with it wasn't like a whole bunch of other stuff. It was just the tail feather up against the sky. Um, and just that one to me was my favorite cover photo that I've had
Hmm.
out there.
That's cool.
That is very cool. What is your favorite filming adventure that you've been on?
That's a good question. The not too long ago, a couple years ago now, I went up and I filmed a sheep hunt with Matzinger, and that one was pretty epic. That's about as much adventure as you can pack in one trip. Like in 17 days or whatever the total length of the trip was.
Yeah.
And everything about that, it was from, I found out I was going less than a month before the trip. We had talked about it years in advance. COVID happened; it got canceled. The couple years that he was going to go, I couldn't film it because we were at Total Archery Challenges with Public Land Tees, and just like couldn't step away from that business at the time. And then the summer that he actually finally was able to go, he had a camera guy lined up, and he had ended up having surgery and wasn't cleared to go film back in the mountains yet. And so I got a text from Jason and said, "You want to go to Northwest Territories and film a sheep hunt?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but like, what are the details? Like, when are you leaving? When?" And so he texted me back the details. It was like 29 days from when we left. And in that 29 days, my wife and I were finishing remodeling our entire house that I'm sitting in now. We were about to leave and move to Idaho Falls for her first ever travel OT rotation. And the time at which I would need to leave for the trip was one day after we got to Idaho. And so we had we had whatever 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks of finish remodel, pack up, drive all the way to Idaho, move into a short-term Airbnb property, and then I flew out. It was and,
And then try to get in shape.
yeah, and at the same, yeah, trying to get in shape while living in Fargo, North Dakota, trying to get in shape for a Dall sheep hunt. And so yeah, so every single day I was, had 50 pounds in the backpack and was like, whatever, walking as far as I could every day. But I knew right away that I was going to be in trouble because immediately, like, my knees were hurting, and I was like, oh boy, like, I am not
Mm.
mountain ready. I've been drinking Mountain Dew and eating Dots cheese curls for 3 months, working on this house, like, caribou coffee in the morning, Mountain Dew, Dots cheese curls. Like, I am not sheep ready. And And so I packed enough Excedrin and ibuprofen and Tylenol to kill a horse, and I flew out of Idaho Falls, and then it took 3 days to get into camp, and next thing I knew, we were getting helicoptered out to our initial hiking spot. Our guide was Dustin Rowe, and we hunted 9 days of a 10-day hunt before Jason killed a sheep, and it took I made it through the hunt just fine, kept up, like just kept my head down, kept grinding, kept moving up, had awesome footage from that trip. And then
Mhm.
it took me a solid like 4 months before my knees, like before I could hike
Mm,
downhill and not have my knees like want to just explode on me. I was just,
really?
yeah, it was the first time ever that like I had, gone into a hunt and then, not like when I came home, I was just wrecked. And so that was a big wake up call, and then now just whatever, like
Mhm.
felt like I was getting in pretty good shape again, and then snapped the Achilles. So, but yeah, as
Oh,
far as
jeez.
filming adventures, like that was a pretty good one where everything went right. I've had some in the
Mm.
past where they're big adventures and everything goes wrong.
Yeah.
And so my first ever sheep hunt that I filmed was the complete opposite experience. It was awful. We got weathered in, ran out of food. The outfitter almost killed himself the first morning that we were in camp. We hiked about 120 to 130 miles over the 12 days of the hunt. I lost
Ooh.
18 pounds. I was carrying like close to, it was like somewhere between 75 and 80 pounds on my back,
Oh,
just up and down and through the bogs and the
yeah.
whole thing. And
Oof.
yeah, at the end of that one, it was just like, I'm glad we're, we made it. I'm glad we're coming out alive. Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
because I I did my mountain goat hunt, and I understand because Ears and I, you know, it was like we kept on going up the mountain and going. I'm getting tired of climbing this mountain.
Yeah.
It's just like, holy moly, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it in the end, it was great, of course. But yeah, I understand that. Like, you are wrecked a little bit. I mean, and I was in shape. And it was just like, this is a little bit different than I was. So I'm climbing 5,600 feet to get in shape, and we're up at 12,000 feet. That's
Right.
a big difference.
Yeah, big
mhm.
difference. Yeah,
Big
yeah,
difference.
big
Yep.
difference. If you're not able to live like at that altitude, at least closer to that for a little while, man, that acclimation is hard. Because anything over 10,000 feet is just like every step is just so difficult. It just sucks so bad. Yeah.
And I have to say, that sheep hunt with Jason, he came to tack. I mean, you guys got back, and it was like, boom, he was at Tack in Big Sky,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
I got lucky enough to have the flip flop guy did his shoulder, and I got to eat some of that. So we
Yeah.
talked about that in earlier, and how, I mean, those kind of things. Even you're filming his hunt, and then I got to eat some of that doll sheep.
Yeah. I
It
mean, what a
it
cool
feels like you're
connection.
part of that. Yeah.
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 You
Yeah.
know, I mean, Ricky and I are both lucky to know you and Jason. Your filming of that hunt, and the hunt in itself, it's like we're there with you and we
Yeah.
experienced it. And for me to be able to eat some of the doll sheep, like, that even makes it even closer,
Yeah. We got to
and
have some bites of that 12-and-a-half-year-old ram. And that we pulled off the mountain, like yeah, that place is all the way up there. It is so cool. So
Uh,
yeah, I'm just glad you
it's
got to be like, to enjoy some of that. Because we got to eat some backstrap that night on a piece of shale, cooked over a
yeah.
jet boil flame. And like it's something, it's one of those experiences that I'll never forget. And there was I'm a big snack guy, big candy, like a
No.
huge sweet
what?
tooth. So the whole trip, I had a celebratory bag of Haribo Gold Bears
Oh,
that was,
nice.
it just was in the bottom of my pack from the moment that we took off. And I carried that stupid bag of gummy bears around for 9 days. And the Jason shot his ram. We went up. We filmed a bunch of stuff like of recovering the ram and getting to test it. And we're about to start cutting this thing up to eat it. And I was like, I got a surprise. I pulled out this big bag of gummy bears, and we had those polished off in about 45 seconds. But I will say that I have never before or since had one taste that good.
I
Oh, I
bet
bet.
So,
not.
Yeah,
yeah.
I bet. Yeah, when Jason sent me, I mean, the photos and everything that you took up there, absolutely beautiful, unreal. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people say, I know, like with a lot of the photos that I take, like they don't oftentimes do it justice as opposed to
Mhm.
actually being there. But like these photos they're just unbelievable. And I just remember clicking through them because he sent me a bunch for some content stuff. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And like you said, it's way up there. I mean, it's almost like a different planet.
Yeah.
It's just wild.
Yeah. Every once in a while, like I have a few pins, on Onyx from when we were up there, and every once in a while I'll just like kind of scroll up the map and just go look at that again. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, if anybody listening, if you know what, like, what a chocolate star is, like one of those like where it's not a Hershey's Kiss, but it's like
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
chocolate star. It has like all the ridges on it, like
Yeah.
Yep.
that place just looks like a whole bunch of those like set side by side, like just a
Huh.
whole bunch of these like little like I don't know what, like a peak and then ridges that go down, and it's just like a
Mm-hmm.
million chocolate stars that are all like lined up next to each other,
Yeah.
just in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
way up there. So
Yeah.
freaking cool.
Yeah.
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 So I'm just trying to think of other questions to ask you here. I assume Grandpa and Grandma are getting pretty excited about things going to be happening.
Oh yeah. Yep. They're pretty fired up. I think the hardest part will be like depending on when the kid shows up. I think the hardest part will be like being like, okay, you can't show up until we get home. Like we're not taking visitors in the hospital. We're just, we want to get back to our own space.
Yeah.
But trying to keep my parents out of town when they're that close is going to be damn near impossible.
That's what I was
Yeah.
wondering.
Yeah.
Sitting in the
Yeah.
car waiting outside.
Yeah. But they've got 4 grandkids already, so it's not so bad.
No, yeah, but
Yeah.
Sam doesn't have any kids yet, so that
I
is a
know.
little different.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
So we were talking earlier. I'm going to go back to a little bit, but your wife, how many places did she travel while you were? I mean, she was a traveling OT, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was awesome. So we went to Idaho Falls first, which was just the greatest because Idaho Falls itself it's a cool little town. There's not a ton to do, but there's good food. It's a very clean, like as far as like everything that we saw, like where we lived and everything, it was very nice town. But the proximity to cool stuff being in Idaho Falls is awesome. I mean, you're 3.5 hours from Stanley, Idaho, in the Sawtooth Mountains. You're 2 hours from the Grand Tetons. You're 3 hours from Salt Lake. You're like right by the Snake River. Um, so much recreation within, very close driving distance.
Mhm.
And so it was so much fun because that when we were there, her schedule was 7 on, 7 off, and so she would work 7 days in a row, and then we would take a 6-day vacation. And
Mhm.
then
Nice.
and at that fall, like while she was working, typically I was trying to do my hunts and content stuff, like so we're both working, and so like I'd go off on whatever hunt, and then I'd come home, and then she'd get done working, and then we'd take off again right away,
Mhm.
and we did that all fall, and it felt like seriously, it just felt like I was on like like 4.5 month just like straight vacation. Like I've never been so tired. It was awesome. Like, but like we were just like going constantly. So that was really Idaho Falls first, and then she took about a month break. I was just very encouraging of her to like take time in between, so just to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And then we went down to St. Joseph, Missouri, just north of Kansas City. She's got some family down there, so it was fun to be able to hang out with them. Probably would not pick St. Joe again. Definitely would not pick St. Joe again. It's 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 one of those spots that could be really cool if it wasn't so I don't want to like dog on anybody who lives in St. Joe, but I would imagine like uh I don't know, it's just rough. It's right along the Missouri, but it's like a lot of beautiful area. But I think it's just very poverty stricken. There's a lot of meth, a lot of drug stuff
Mm.
in that town. So we had a good time there. We got to, we did a lot of different styles of adventures. And then where did we go after that? We were in Salt Lake for kind of last spring, early summer. And then we came home for a while. And then we were just out in Fort Collins for 3 months out there. So that was pretty cool to
Hmm.
be only 15 minutes from Josh and Kate and the kids and,
Yeah.
my brother. And so we were out close to them. And then now we're back home just waiting for our own kid.
Well, I like hearing that
Yep.
because what I'm going with that is, in some relationships, you go on all your adventures and
Mm-hmm.
you've been here, you've been there, you've been everywhere, like, and then the other person has not been so many places and they want to go places and you have already been there in aspect that now it's time that you want to kind of settle down maybe a little bit. Not that you don't want to go on those adventures, but it's cool that you guys got to share in those adventures together,
Yeah.
and you
Hmm.
have those memories too. It's not like, for me, like, I've been to Australia, Cindy hasn't. I pull out these pictures that you're here, you're
Right.
there, and still have pictures, but you don't have those shared adventures, and you have shared adventures. You know what I mean? And then that's
Yeah.
so cool. Because I'm trying to get more and more shared adventures. I
Mm-hmm.
was selfish probably when I was younger, because and probably ruined a relationship because I'd went on those adventures. Now I want to hunt. You know what I
Right.
and that's the honest to God truth, is that this was what I want to go do. I mean, that's where I want my vacation time to go. And
Mm-hmm.
if you want to go somewhere, go. But we aren't sharing those adventures. I'm glad you got to share. I mean, show people that you can share in those adventures too.
Yeah, yeah, and it's been really cool. We've been able to do a lot of cool stuff together, and then because of they're typically 3 month rotations, and then because of the time off in between, like we went for a full 3 weeks down to New Zealand for our delayed honeymoon, and so it was
Mhm.
like, okay, we finished up in St. Joseph, Missouri. We came home for about a week and a half, and then we hopped on a plane and went to the other side of the world and just like soaked in 3.5 weeks just driving around the South Island together and doing all sorts of cool stuff and then flying back home and then going on to the next travel assignment. So it's been it's definitely brought us a lot closer together, being able to do all this stuff together instead of, like you said, like because typically it was like she was working and then I was having to travel for work, and go on whatever. I created a cool life doing photography and video stuff, and I honestly felt guilty sometimes because like be like, well, she's at the hospital working her ass off, and I'm out chasing turkeys in Montana or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so it's been fun to do a lot more together.
And a couple of those things, like, I mean, Cindy has learned, like going to TAC or going to the Hunt Expo or wherever we go, is like, because I kind of felt guilty in the beginning, but people walk up to you and they start reminiscing about the adventures you went on together, and I'm going,
Right.
yeah, we'll go, we're going on adventures, and that's what we do now. But it's just like in the beginning, it wasn't that she was making me feel guilty. It was just like, we'll get there,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
actually we're trying to figure out a time to go to Iceland.
Sweet.
Mm.
Yep.
You know,
I've heard
but
amazing
first,
things about it.
yeah. So and with me learning, getting into your class, if you're going to teach a little of this photography, for more photography, I can learn, and maybe I could even call you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but
Anytime.
but our first trip is to Alaska. Her son just moved up to Alaska, and he's getting married this weekend, actually, in the Bighorns.
Sweet.
Thank
Mm.
God. I mean, it's not eastern South Dakota and the hot, humid. We're going to be in the Bighorns where it's cool and
Yeah.
hopefully less humid,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because this sweet guy melts.
Yeah. 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 Well, yes. Yeah. Y- yeah. It was, let's see, what day is it? It's the 26th today. Yesterday was
Yeah,
my birthday. It
yeah.
was 90. 94% humidity and 94 degrees. So yeah, just lovely day.
I jumped on when you were live today, and I was gonna say happy birthday, but I'm like, well, maybe he doesn't want me to blast that out on to all those people, so I figured I'd save it for now.
I appreciate it. No, I wouldn't have
But
cared. Yeah, hardly anything's
I was
private
just
anymore.
yeah, I just had to giggle too at some of the questions, like the guy that asked, what the heck was it? Something about our whitetail better than mule
Oh,
deer or
are
something like.
whitetail really a lesser deer than a mule deer?
Yeah,
I was like,
So I was like, no, they're all good. They're all good
it's like
deer.
deer, man. They're just it's a
Yep.
different species. Like you can't.
Exactly.
I hate that question because like it's people like, why are elk better than deer? It's like, well, they're not. They're just a different. It's like it all depends on what you like chasing. I don't.
Yeah.
I I don't know. I love deer. I love killing mule deer and whitetails. Will I kill elk? Absolutely. Have I killed some elk? Yes. It's not the first thing I think about. I want the next elk hunt I want to go on is like I want to draw like a really good tag. Um, is my goal, and I like finally have enough points in several states to draw a really good tag. I've also
Hmm.
never killed an elk with a rifle. I would love to go just smash a giant with a rifle,
Yeah.
and I will feel just as accomplished about that as I will, killing a raghorn with a bow. So yeah, the questions like that just make me laugh. I think I think maybe, if you hunt a lot, I think you get better at compartmentalizing like different species. So like
Yeah.
when I'm whitetail hunting, like that's all I'm doing. Like I'm not thinking about mule deer, I'm not thinking about elk, I'm not thinking about
Yeah.
ducks. I'm just like that's it. One track mind, and then if I'm mule deer
Mhm.
hunting, that's all I'm thinking about. If I'm elk hunting, that's all I'm thinking about. I'm not wishing that I was doing something else. Um, so I think people need to take that approach more often. Like,
Mhm.
these 10 days, like I'm a fanatical elk hunter. And
Yeah.
then next week, I'm a fanatical mule deer hunter. So,
It's funny because my mule deer trip that I have coming up here this year, I basically just like I drew a bear tag in Minnesota, and I was like, not going to do that. I'm not going to whitetail hunt. This is it. I just want to
yep,
put all my eggs in this basket. I only have limited time, and I need to make sure that this happens and it goes down.
yep,
So yeah, I'm one track mind. I'm all mule deer right now. I'm
I like it.
not even thinking about
Yeah,
whitetails.
yep. And I had an archer mule deer hunt planned for probably like the not the first week of October, but going into that second week. And I was super jacked because I kind of stumbled on a spot last year and only
Hmm.
had like a day and a half to hunt.
Hmm.
And like it was like, oh, if I can spend like 5-6 days out here, like I'm gonna dig up a deer for sure.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah.
there's some good ones. And that's not happening. So that's
Yeah.
another goal for next year. But that's okay. It's okay. So
It'll be bigger next year, man.
that spot's not going anywhere,
Yeah.
like yep. Funny, just little tangent. I sorry to keep going off on just random, thoughts, but
No.
the only reason I
Great.
found that spot was I was driving past it and I thought to myself, I was like, I should really glass like out on that point. And it was just kind of like just super windy, kind of gnarly day. I was like, nah, I'll find another spot. When I saw a porcupine, and I was like, I should go. I have a joke with a buddy who works at Eastman's, and I was like, I'll go get some photos of that porcupine, send them to Brandon, and then I'll walk out there and glass that. It'll be, two birds with one stone. And I went out and I shot some photos of the porcupine. I walked the 300 yards to this point. It was one of those times where you sit down, you just set the tripod up, put the spotting scope on the tripod, and like you put your eye in the eyepiece, and there's just a deer in, like you did nothing. You're like, okay, there's a deer. Like I'm looking at a deer that, I was like, all right, like scan a little bit. I was like, oh, that's a deer like that. I was like, oh, and there's another deer right there. Like, oh boy, okay, now a minute. Now I got to figure out like how to, are they on public? Are they on private? Like,
Yeah.
and then I was like, ended up having to try to loop all the way around. And on my way in, I ran into a group of 5 bucks, and I was like, I guess I'll go after them. And then I went in there and blew that. But I was like, oh, like what a cool experience
Hmm.
from I'm not going to glass there to now I've got a spot like
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
of a porcupine. Oh, Yeah.
That's funny. That's
Because it's
cool.
timing. I've been in those
Mm-hmm.
places too. Like a few of the places I found, it's like something slowed you down here, and I've had an elk run across the road or a deer, and it's going,
Yep.
yeah, huh, I'll check
Oh,
this area out a little bit more.
right. Exactly. Yeah.
But
It
I
really
have two
is.
things.
Oh,
Go
sure.
ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I have two things for you. Like it's funny how you talk about like deer and elk, because in September I'm all elk, but
Mm-hmm.
there is nothing. And it's funny, like when elk season's over, I kind of feel a little let down, just because it's like I've hunted and hunted and hunted. Then I get to October's all right. I'm not. I don't get as excited. We start getting to the last weekend of October. I start getting a little more excited, and then the whitetail is on, and I'm spotting, stalking, and there's muleys in between there. But it's like
Mm-hmm.
when you're spotting and stalking any of that stuff, it's still, to me, it's the adrenaline is just about the same as the bugle and bull.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And especially spot and stalking. I mean, there is nothing like spotting and stalking a whitetail. There is nothing like it because you have to be stealthy and you have to hope the cards fall in the right places too.
Yep.
And then you talked about wanting to shoot a elk with a rifle. And here's one thing that the great philosopher Sean DeGray told me one time. He said, the elk doesn't know what it or the doesn't know what it killed. It can be an arrow or it can be a rifle. It's a dead bull's a dead bull.
That's right. Yeah. I and that and, and I fully adopt that philosophy for any animal. Like as long as it's legal, like and I get a lot of this stuff. Like my brother like has a big influence on how I hunt and the types of things. He's a elk fanatic, and I got more of the deer bug for sure. But both of us, it's kind of like who cares? Like some people get so focused on one pursuit, and we've always been like any tag, anytime, anywhere, whatever I
Mm-hmm.
can get. Like if it's a good tag, that's what I want to go do. If it,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's a cool area, that's what I want to go do. I don't care if it's a rifle or a bow. I freaking love rifle hunting because most of the time I go rifle hunting after I've been archery hunting for 90 days and just pure frustration. And then half the time when I'm rifle hunting, I end up like, I'm within, 250 yards. And I'm like, okay, I only got to cover like another 200 yards. And then I go, oh no, you can just lay down and shoot this thing.
I,
Like, like end up sneaking way in on stuff you don't need to. I had a mule deer a while back. I did that. I like spotted it from 1,200 yards or whatever. And I was like, okay, I got to get to I got to get to 400 yards but the whole time I was like, okay, get closer, get closer, get closer, get closer. And I'm in this little gully and I'm sneaking down and I'm watching the deer and they're working their way to bed, like, on public. And I'm like, okay, like I just got to I got to cut like half the distance. And I snuck up to this little ridge. I'm out of cover. I'm out of terrain. I was like, man, I am not going to close the distance. And then I pulled the rangefinder up and it was 216 yards. I was like, oh, okay. Just put that gun out there, shoot this thing. And yeah, my biggest mule deer ever. So I love all of it. But I like Sean's philosophy for sure.
yeah.
It's funny because I was having a really hard time agreeing with you guys on that one for a minute. And maybe turkeys are different, but the first time I put my bow down and I blasted a turkey in the head with a gun, I was like, I may never do this another way again.
Exactly.
And then, of course,
Well,
then I killed two birds 2 years in a row with a bow again. But
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I can't discriminate one way or another. You know what I mean? Rifle hunted with
Yeah.
my old man for years and
Yeah.
had a ton of good memories there. And I'm sure there's going to be a day where I'm going to have to pick one up again. So
The only thing that we don't tolerate is crossbows, but that's a whole other.
yes, yeah, that's a. I don't
I'm
even
just
want to
kidding.
get down that rabbit
I
hole,
just like
buddy.
to poke the bear. I just like to
Yeah,
light the fuse, walk away.
There- yeah,
oh man.
but but probably all three of us, though, in honesty, if we want to be, if we did a nostalgic episode here in, I think episode 12 or whatever, but we have memories with our dads,
Mm-hmm.
and most
Yep.
of those were with guns.
Oh yeah. Yep.
You know what I mean? They started out with guns. I mean, it's one of those deals, and there is nothing more. Nobody will ever take those memories away from me for sure. Like we used to come Black Hills deer hunting every year, and
Yep.
my memory, you always, you being young, you want to go out and get something, but riding around in the pickup, going to these places that they drop you off, that was the times where you learned a lot from the old stories and
Mm-hmm.
and getting a little heck from them. But I grew up in a time where, like out here in the Black Hills, is like you're 12 years old. They might know where you are, but the cabin's that way. See you later.
Right.
And you had to learn,
Yep.
and that's and I feel privileged to have done that. But I mean, those memories, those first hunting memories, were probably with a rifle, and then we evolved into the bow. But
Yep.
I mean, my dad had a Ben Pearson, I think, Mustang, it was called, and with 150 grain deadheads, but tree stands weren't a big deal where I grew up, so it's just one of those fun things. So,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
but anyway, I'm going to let you go because you might be having a baby here pretty soon, but we have one last question we always ask everybody, buddy.
All right. I'm ready.
What's the good life to Sam?
I think the good life is just surrounding yourself with the best people you can possibly find and enjoying the passing of time, which is all the only pursuit that life is really about.
Yep. Yep. I love that. That's good.
It is.
Beautiful.
You know, and you know what's interesting? Most people, that's the first thing they say is surround yourself with good people.
Mm-hmm.
And Ricky and I are lucky to be doing this podcast now, and we get to surround ourselves with a lot of good people, that some we didn't even know and some we do know, like you. And I just feel thankful that you said, yeah, we'll do it. I'll do it, Rick. You didn't give me the middle finger or anything like that.
Well, you two are good people, so I consider myself well surrounded tonight.
Well, good.
Yeah, man. This has been several months in the making. We've been trying to make this happen, and so thanks for your time, and especially on the cusp of your child being born. And I'm really excited to kind of see that new adventure for you and how that goes. I mean, I think you're just gonna have a blast. I think you're gonna love being a dad. It's one of my favorite things in the world, and I'm just looking forward to the days now where I can start getting her out into the wilderness
Absolutely.
with me and doing all that kind of stuff. And so we're like
Yep.
right on the edge, and
Yep.
so yeah, thanks so much for your time, and we really appreciate you being on this episode of Between Two Ricks.
Yeah, thanks for I just appreciate you guys having me on, and look forward to doing it again, at some point.
Yeah.
We'll make it
We're
happen
gonna
again
have
before
to.
too long. Yep. Absolutely.
Yes, and one more thing, we're on the back side of your birthday, the front side of just about having a baby. Oh my gosh, I feel lucky, about that. So, and it must be getting that time because I forgot to plug in my computer and it's saying battery saver. Okay, now
All
I'm
right.
plugged in.
Perfect timing.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much for being here, Don't Die Rusty fans. And of course, keep chasing your dreams, living your best life, and being the best you. And don't die rusty.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night,
Appreciate it,
everybody.
man.